Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date and help the channel grow. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And now, on with the show. You are listening to the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion with the one and only Gray. So, hey everybody, it's been 6 years since I started doing Not the Popular Opinion. I haven't been doing the video things for quite as long, but I wanted to do something special-ish to mark the occasion. So what I'm going to do here is a live one-take reading of the piece that I'm publishing for the site's anniversary. Okay, it's not a live reading. You can't tune in. I'm not going to be taking Q&As on the side of the screen or anything like that. But this is a one-take, one-cut, warts and all reading of this thing, as if you were standing in a room listening to me read it, and I'm ignoring the fact that there's anybody else out there. So I hope you get something out of it. I hope you get a little bit of a sense of who I am as a person. Feel free to turn away from the screen if that doesn't appeal to you. And wish me luck. Thanks. Like the galactic cartoon that is our existence, we are all drawn to do what we are drawn to do. Some people are singers, they are drawn to sing. Some people are painters, and they find the most fulfillment when they have brush in hand. I used to think I was a lot of different things at different times, but whatever force in the bustling art studio of the cosmos is dangling the pen over my character, they seem pretty uncertain just how I'm supposed to be drawn. And if they can't define what I am, how can I possibly define what I want? As of the current month, July of 2023, I will have been writing for Not the Popular Opinion for 6 years. In 2017, I decided that I needed to, as I saw it, set a few things straight about a certain film I believe was getting a bum rap in various online outlets and the regular movie press. I gathered up what little wit, skill, and what to this day laughingly passes for style, signed up for a WordPress site, because it was free, and published my first article. Don't Look Back. Martha, Martha, Martha. How Priming Saved the Man of Steel. Yes, you read that correctly. My career as a film muser and muser of film-adjacent storytelling began as an apologist for one of the most maligned, mangled, mulled over, merely mutilated, and misunderstood storytelling choices in modern mainstream movie making. We all have to start somewhere. Now, every good brand needs a name that reflects something about it, or barring that, one that is either evocative or provocative in some way, or barring that, something that sounds cool or amusing. Basically, you need a name that'll help you stand out. Now, given my original intent to peel away the tart rind of mainstream thought about certain films that were being stomped on at the time, I attempted to inject myself like an invasive organism into the intellectual body of at least pop culture criticism. Little did I know at the time the exact density of the critical mass, or how difficult it would be to push through the puffed up tissue that's grown to cover the interior of that world. I chose the name Not the Popular Opinion not just to label a brand, but also as the identity I wanted to pursue, because at the time it seemed like everyone else doing this was just trying to find a newer, flashier way to present the same safe observations and opinions. It was all a game of trying to get attention, and that meant sticking to the middle of the road so closely I'm surprised the thought police didn't pull everyone over and start handing out sobriety tests like Raisinets. I didn't aspire to be an iconoclast. I'm neither motivated nor vain enough to believe that I can assault tradition without looking absolutely fucking ridiculous. Believe me, I'm not saying this as if I've achieved status green on that particular venture. There have been people who have accused me of being a contrarian, a contrabass on a train of thought, just playing against the low humming rhythms for my own amusement. Maybe that's how I once imagined myself, but we all eventually find life is a lot less Route 66 than it is the long and winding road. I have no real desire to sail alone against the storm, but just because I find my sails occasionally turned into the wind does not mean I'm just following the popular tide. I may get some kicks out of a good debate, but when I agree with the point, no one has to beetle it out of me. But what was the point? What is the point, I wonder aloud to this night, to the moths and moonbeams? Like any other creature struggling through the muck, mud, and McDonald's-laden landscapes, the end result I most covet is happiness, and it's so very, very hard for me to find anything that makes me truly happy. Happiness to me is like a kicking, screaming child at the bottom of a well who clearly wants to be rescued, but whose irrational and erratic movements makes the entire endeavor painfully difficult. Spending time with my wife makes me happy. Movies make me happy, and when I combine the two of them, that's when I find myself in what I assume others would refer to as my happy place. I love writing and recording my narrations because this is how I reach out to the world. If I were a singer, I would sing. If I were a painter, I would paint. If I could make churros and sell them from a cart, I would at least look into making tacos as well. But it being the case, this is what I do because this is what I can do. So much of my life, presumably most of our lives, feels like it exists on a treadmill of all too human perception, always moving but never fucking getting anywhere. What I find some dim echo of joy in is the doing of this thing, the act of creating something, of finishing it and releasing it to the world. Finishing something I've started has always been a problem for me, so every time I hit publish and send one of these so-called pieces careening and caterwauling from my fingertips to your soul windows is an accomplishment. As far as I'm concerned, there are no small victories, just oversized expectations. We always have people asking us what we want. It's the only way to make sure humanity doesn't simply stagnate and die while we're standing in line at Starbucks. While that's a question I can answer in the immediate sense, do I want a snack or something to drink or a hand job, I've never been very good at looking at my life beyond the next 10 minutes or so. Probably my biggest flaw as a human being is my complete inability to visualize my own future. I have no gizzard for charting a course further out than the last event on my calendar, so when I started doing this, I had no end game in mind. I have no exit strategy, which is perfectly fine, seeing as I never had an operating strategy. There's no reward waiting for me on the other side of some great wall I've erected to stimulate my own growth. What I do has been, up to this point, done with the hope that something would eventually emerge from it, a recognition, an opportunity, to be invited somewhere to participate in something, to receive some metaphorical rose indicating that, on some level, what I do has value. I had hoped that the very act of doing would somehow carve a path through the obsidian hills at the edge of the map to reveal some newer map on the other side. Feel free to imagine a Legend of Zelda style musical cue at this point. I'm not a great looking person. I'm not athletic. I can move, but I can't dance. I can carry a tune, but I can only carry it so far before my arms get really tired. I've run face first into the stucco wall of my own inadequacies with every endeavor I've ever engaged in, and I can tell you there is little in life more frustrating than knowing exactly where your lines are, as it makes the prospect of approaching them frustrating when you realize that what you want to achieve lay just beyond them, mocking you with their obliviousness to your pain. At some point in my life, I learned not to trust praise or compliments. They strike me like casting pennies at the poor, the performative act of giving something that had no real value to you to begin with. I don't fully understand when or why that happened. Maybe there is no why and it's just something that's broken in me. Whatever it is, when I receive praise for something, my response is to be grateful, then uncomfortable, and then to assume the person must not know very much about whatever I'm being praised for, because if they did, they'd save those pennies to lob at someone else's head. When I was young, I don't remember there being a lot of adults in my life, teachers, counselors, extended family, ... You know, the people who are supposed to be possessed of the knowledge and wisdom a child lacks? Well, those people didn't take too much interest in me. I wasn't a very good student as I had trouble doing the busy work that students are given. I was far from stupid, but my grades never reflected that, and very quickly it became apparent that people were just kind of giving up on me, as if they'd reached their limit and figured that with all I was capable of, if I didn't straighten out at some point, then I deserved whatever kind of life I got. There were smart kids who were excelling and struggling kids who were working their asses off to keep up. No one had time for a kid who had all the tools but just wasn't interested in building birdhouses. As long as I didn't disrupt anything, everyone was content to just push me through the system until I wasn't their problem anymore. It's not exactly what one would consider a growth strategy, even if it does birth a kind of emotional cancer. I may occasionally receive some negative feedback, but criticisms of my work is far and few between, as the compliments I don't trust. I have no illusions that my work thrills all comers, nor do I believe everyone who engages with me goes away with the impression that I'm the functional intellectual equivalent of an empty MP3 player perched on two popsicle sticks. Harrison Ford was right. You can write it, but you can't say it. What I am concerned about is not being perceived as having anything of value to contribute, and instead of being either worshipped or maligned, I just wind up being ignored, like that light switch you know you should replace, but since it's never totally failed to spark the bulb, you just don't bother. That's what I learned in my life. If people can't feel some self-righteous sense of fulfillment that they helped you accomplish something, they simply don't bother with you. Now, I made a pledge that I would never ask for payment in exchange for access to the stupid shit inside my head, and I aim to stick to that. However, I have had a Ko-Fi page for about a year now, and I attach a link to every post and a mention in every narrated video. As of this date, I have only received one tip, and this sends a message to me about the perceived value of my work. This is not me passing the hat around. I'm doing okay over here. This is simply a statement of fact coupled to the observation that whatever value my work might enjoy, it does so only because it requires no investment. In short, the only reason anyone engages is because it's free. And I get that. It's not like I haven't wily coyoted myself straight into the rock face of my own limitations. I know I'm not the repository of film knowledge that many of my peers are, though I do try to make up for it with a tenacious sense of structure, an eye for pertinent detail, and an unflinching desire to put all things in proper context. I'm also not the most entertaining or interesting writer, certainly not the most day-to-day productive. Becoming a YouTube personality was always a long shot since I was so clearly have a face for radio and a voice for magazines. I'm not quite old enough to have any kind of assumed authority, yet I'm too old to be seen as part of the youth culture. I'm not that tuned into any esoteric wavelength. I don't have a niche that I operate in, or a gimmick or character that I play. I don't do hyperbolic overreaction, and I refuse to play to divisive extremes. What you get of me is as me as I can make myself, all grumph and harumph. But I'm not entirely sure who that is. Am I the guy with the emotionally sparse pseudoscientific approach, or am I the guy with the Kerouac cum Thompson beat voice I sometimes try to slip into when I think no one is looking? Whoever that person is, they are clearly someone others don't enjoy engaging with. I've never been much fun at parties, which is why I typically don't go. The fewer parties you attend, the less you get invited. It's the ever-spiraling toilet bowl rush of downward pressure on your social presence. I don't feel like there are doors opening up ahead of me. The fact is, I don't see any doors. All I see either before or behind me is a long plastic hallway filled with the sound of my own voice echoing into infinity, and two options for movement: to go forward into the narrowing iris of unrelenting emptiness ahead, or turn around and leave the way I came in. And as far as I can tell, the only thing I lose by leaving is whatever I invested in my iMac and my Yeti mic. It's not going to stop me from watching our lovely movies. It won't stop me from talking to people on Twitter, but I've come so far from those first pieces where I had a thing I was trying to do. I'm not sure if there's a thing I'm actually doing anymore. All I know is that the only thing that keeps me going is the fleeting moment of satisfaction I feel when I publish a piece or upload a video, and I make note of the fact that it's now part of the cellular matrix of the world. Something that is the product of my own efforts as a function of my own will and guided by nothing else other than my own intellect and desire is now some part of the landscape of humanity. I'm not just a bystander watching others whiz by on psychoelectric go-karts fueled by equal parts ego, obstinance, and ignorance. I'm a driver. maybe not the fastest, maybe not the most precise, and I might not be riding the most eye-catching plank, but I'm on the road, and that's got to count for something. So that's who I am. But what do I want? I recently posted a look at the latest entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, and I wrapped that piece in a framing device that uses the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction to sum up my feelings about the film. But in that summation may lay the very key to understanding where I sit with all of this. I keep telling myself that I do this just for me, that writing about movies becomes the excuse to watch more movies. And it's true that I would likely have never seen many of the films I have in the last few years if I hadn't told myself it was like going to class. Watching movies is the reason to write about them, and writing about movies is the reason to watch them. An immortal snake forever eating its own tail. But after I run through my supply of intellectual currency on a specific piece and launch it out into the unforgiving void, I just feel numb. Curse the person who decided that the front page of every publishing site needs to put a set of numbers in front of your face telling you how many people aren't engaging with your work. Truly, if it weren't for being told I have no readers, I wouldn't have the illusion of any readers at all. I'll never be good enough. I'll never be clever enough or smart enough or tuned in enough. I'm never going to be part of a crowd because I have an intimately internalized sense that crowds are dangerous and ultimately self-destructive entities. I'm not an artist. I tried to be, but it didn't take. But here I've been pumping out an average of just over a piece a week for the last 6 years, and for what? Why am I doing this? What's the point? What do I want? I'm at a point where I'm operating almost on coke-fiend levels of self-propulsion, continuously chasing something I think will fill the hole inside me. Every time I imagine what I want to get out of this, I always conjure an image of myself interacting in some kind of forum, a lecture, a Q&A, a festival, a podcast. I don't have fantasies of posting banger tweets for internet clout. I'd love to have the readership and maybe scrape a few dollars off the top so I can keep myself in movies and internet access, and maybe not have to work full time so I can make time to watch more movies. But what I really want is to be part of groups interacting. It's ironic, I've spent so much of my life avoiding having to deal with people, and yet when I boil away all the fat and fetid meat to reveal the cool ivory bone of truth beneath, what I want is that feedback and interaction. I want to be accepted and appreciated. I want to feel that this thing I'm giving myself to is giving something back. 6 years on, and I don't think I'm getting that, and that absolutely breaks my heart. I have no illusions that this is anything more than a hobby, and like the addict I've become, I'll likely keep doing it as long as there's no compelling reason for me not to. But it's hard to keep giving yourself to something and never feel as if you're getting anything back, and I don't know how to change that on my own. I'm not looking for pity. I'm doing just fine in my life, all things considered. The universe doesn't owe anyone a sense of personal fulfillment, and I've probably been a big enough asshole long enough that this is just karma. All energy flows according to the whims of the great magnet. I must have been a fool to try to escape its pull. Will I still be writing Not the Popular Opinion 6 years from now? What would that even look like? I can't imagine new opportunities are going to manifest in my graying years, but who the hell knows how any of this works. As far as the immediate future is concerned, I have no plans to give this up, as long as it continues not to cost me anything. This is a hobby. No matter how intensely drawn to it I might be, that's all it is, because that's all it can be. I've had a few creative hobbies over the years, and this is the one I've stuck with the longest, so I suppose that has to count for something in some existential ledger. And I plan to keep doing it because, honestly, I really don't know how to do anything else. I'm not indecisive, I'm just drawn that way. So if I were a singer, I'd sing. If I were a painter, I'd paint. But for now, I'm being drawn as a writer. So I guess I'll just keep writing until the ink in the pen finally runs dry. This has been the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion. As always, I have been Gray, and if you like what you heard, you can leave a tip at our Ko-Fi page at ko-fi.com/NotThePopularOpinion. You can follow us on Twitter at @only_Gray, and don't forget our main page at NotThePopularOpinion.wordpress.com, where you'll find more great articles just like this. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if you're as good to others as you are to yourself, we might just make it through this mess. See ya.